OVO Westbrook here, man, and in this video, I'm going to tell you why Michael Porter Jr. should go #1 overall over Marvin Bagley in the 2018 NBA Draft. Now, before I start, I just want to make it very clear that these are two great prospects, and there are other great prospects that could go #1. But at this moment right now, these two are pretty much the clear-cut #1 and #2 picks of the 2018 Draft. What inspired me to talk about this was a conversation that I had with someone at work, and it was very, very interesting. So, without further ado, man, let's go ahead and get into it. The first thing we're going to talk about is size for position. Now, both of these guys are roughly the same size. So, you got Michael Porter Jr., who stands at 6'10" with a 7-foot wingspan, and Marvin Bagley, who stands at around 6'11" with a 7-foot wingspan. Now, the difference is the position that they're going to be playing in the NBA. Now, Michael Porter Jr. will be playing the 3. And depending on what team, he could be playing some 2, because basically he's just going to be on the wing. Keep this in mind. A 6'10" shooting guard, a 6'10" small forward. Both very great size for both positions. Now, Marvin Bagley, he's going to end up playing center in the NBA. Like, I know he's listed as a power forward right now, but with the way that the NBA is changing, he's going to be a center on somebody's roster one day. And now with that, he doesn't really have a great size advantage like how Michael Porter Jr. has. Now, Marvin Bagley, he's not a shrimp. Don't get that wrong, but he's not huge either. But like all rookies need to gain weight and gain some muscle as they go farther into their careers. That's gonna happen. But just imagine Marvin Bagley trying to check Joel Embiid, and imagine Joel Embiid checking Marvin Bagley. Who gets the best of that matchup? Exactly. Now picture Michael Porter Jr. going up against someone of the likes of Gordon Hayward, who has a physical advantage there. Now with Marvin Bagley, if he happens to be a little undersized in any matchup, he has the athleticism to make up for it, right? The only problem is there are so many players around his size that play his position, power forward / center, that have athleticism that's just as good or even greater. With Michael Porter Jr., you don't really have that problem. You don't have the combination of guys that are taller, longer, and stronger and more athletic, you know? But with Marvin Bagley, that's what you have to wait on. Now, the physical doesn't mean everything. Keep that in mind. Like, physical, that's just one part of everything. But the other concern that I really have for Marvin Bagley that I noticed, and I'm pretty sure nobody really talks about this, Marvin Bagley never, hardly, rarely, never, ever uses his offhand. And honestly, by watching some of his tapes, I feel like the reason he doesn't use that offhand is because it's weak. Like, he doesn't really have the same kind of skill with that offhand, which is the right hand, like he does with his left hand. From what I've watched from him, the most I've ever seen him dribble with his offhand is 1 dribble, and I have never, ever, ever seen him take a shot with his right hand, ever. Now, in high school and in college, he's going to be able to get away with that because of why? Because of his athleticism. And he's 6'11" in college. That's not a small guy for a college athlete. But when you get into the pros and you have NBA coaches, which are the best coaches in the world, arguably, and the world's best players, arguably, they are going to clamp down on that left hand. So my question to you is, when Marvin Bagley's left hand gets shut down, then what? Can he do some work with that right hand? Now, I'm not saying that he has to be, an elite ball handler or elite with his right hand. He just has to be able to at least take 5 strong dribbles and finish at the basket with both hands. And that I haven't exactly seen yet. And with him not being the most athletic and the biggest guy on the court in the NBA, that's going to mean something. Like, imagine this. Like, I'm pretty sure all you guys play 2K. or a lot of you play 2K. Imagine if you were playing with a player on 2K who could only use one hand, and if you use the other hand, when you go over 2 dribbles, he's gonna fumble the ball and you have to pass it. When I watch Marvin Bagley, for the most part, when the ball touches that offhand, the most I've ever seen is 1 dribble, and then I've seen a pass. Even on the fast break. Like if he's on the fast break and the ball touches his right hand, either he's gonna switch it back over to that left, or he's gonna jump and pass it. That is a fair concern. Now, as with Michael Porter Jr., you can go both ways with him. Like he can go both ways. Like he can use his right hand, he can use his left hand, and he has a lot of moves, which is great. So I mean, you have a combination of size, you have the skill, you have some athleticism. Now he just has to add on some weight, some muscle. Now I mean, there's guys in the NBA who aren't very dominant with their offhand. For example, you have Tyreke Evans that plays for the Grizzlies. You have Jared Bayless and a couple other guys. So I mean, it's not very, very uncommon for a guy in the NBA to not be able to use his offhand. Well, actually it is, but I mean, there's guys in the NBA that aren't very good with their offhand. Basically, that's what I'm trying to say. Now, one thing that the guy told me about Michael Porter Jr., he was talking about his injury. Now, I mean, there have been players that have slipped in the draft because of injury. Now, Michael Porter Jr. is actually going through some sort of leg injury at the moment. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't really see that as a really big deal. For example, Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving had an injury that was season-ending for Duke, so he didn't play very much for Duke that year. Still went number 1 overall because people knew of his skill, people knew of his talent and his potential. And that number 1 pick panned out to be an all-star. Now you have guys like Joel Embiid, who slipped in the draft because of his injury. And I bet the teams that didn't pick him regret that. So I mean, unless it's a serious injury that looks like it ended the career of that player, you still have to take that player, honestly. You can't let that player slip. Think of your favorite NBA player. Now, at whatever position they were drafted, imagine that in that draft, they were injured. And imagine that they slipped 2 to 3 spots. Imagine how the team that drafted them now would feel about that if they didn't draft that player because of the injury. Now, by the time that the NBA draft starts, Michael Porter Jr. will have played in a lot of games. I mean, he just missed the first 3 games so far. Like, he will come back and he will play, he will showcase his talents as every other person in this draft. Now, keep in mind again, I'm going to say this again. I'm not saying that Marvin Bagley isn't going to be a great player in the NBA. I'm just clearly saying that I would pick Michael Porter Jr. over Marvin Bagley. And there's going to be a few other prospects in the draft that eat too. You know, I mean, you got DeAndre Ayton. Now, Luka Doncic, if that's how you say his name, I mean, I have to see that to believe it first. I'm not saying that he won't make it in this league. I'm just saying that with the international prospect, you have to be very careful. But that right there is for another video. Now, with all that being said, that's the end of this video. Go ahead and leave a like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, man. And this is Ovie Westbrook, and I'll be back with more. Peace.